last 24 hours, you have heard a very meticulous timeline by the prosecution on everything that transpired to the day, to the hour almost, of what happened with Casey Anthony from June 1st all the way through the end of December of 2008. What you did not hear from the prosecution was the reasons as to what transpired. They gave you who was where, who did what. A lot of the things that they gave that you will find as this case proceeds, that a lot of these things are speculation, conjecture. As we get into the details, you'll find that a lot of this stuff simply does not make sense. For the last 3 years, the world has watched as this case unfolded. Today, however, I stand before you to give you the facts as to what truly happened from June and through December of 2008. For that's the time period, starting in June, where young Caylee Anthony was last seen, where she disappeared. The time passed, and it wasn't until December that the remains of young Caylee Anthony were discovered in a wooded area. So what really happened? Well, there's only one person that can give you that story. I am here to answer the questions and to show that when all the facts are heard and when all the evidence has been presented, that you will have no choice but to understand and to rule that there was no homicide, that the only case that you have to support is that Casey Anthony witnessed a horrific accident. But I will get to that later. In order for you to understand how this truly happened and all the events and the actions of the people involved, you need to understand more of the dynamics between Casey Anthony, Caylee Anthony, George Anthony, Cindy Anthony, Lee Anthony, and many of the other players involved. Before this case is over, you will have understood this family dynamic. You will see and hear evidence of the dynamic between this family, between the individuals, and what has transpired to bring us to where we are today. What I would like to begin with is a little detail on the Anthonys. George and Cindy Anthony have been married for a number of years. They lived up north where George Anthony worked for a police department. Was very satisfied with his job. His wife, Cindy, worked up there as well, but she was able to transfer to Florida. She wanted to move to Florida because that is where her mother and father resided, and she wanted to be like a good daughter, close to her family. So she asked her husband to move. George did not want to leave his job. He could not find the same job down here that he had up there. But as any good husband does, and father of 2 children, he struggled with the idea and eventually agreed. But that agreement was the beginning of a problem that would grow for years. And that problem helped develop where we are today. As they came down and settled, they had 2 children. Lee Anthony was the oldest, and Casey Anthony was the youngest child. Young Casey was the only daughter. So in every traditional family, the daughter tends to have a special meaning to the father in the house, and this family was no different. George and Casey Anthony had a special bond that has lasted all these years. It was only in the last few years that bond began to change, and as it changed both of them. And you will find, as this case unfolds, that those changes became very important to the life and eventually the death of Caylee Anthony. You will see that the evidence will bring that a young daughter in any family is a the eye of her father. The father, in many ways, regarded her as treasure, someone to be protected, to be given everything. And George Anthony did exactly that. He provided for his family, but he always provided a little extra for Casey. Casey grew up understanding that she was the golden child, the youngest. She got away with things that her brother did not. She got privileges that the others did not. Casey developed the ability to coerce the family to do what she wanted. As many teenagers do, they learn to lie. A little story here to get the keys to go visit a friend or to do things like that. What you will find over this trial is that those lies grew over time. They got more elaborate. As you heard the prosecution, there are lies that many of us will hear and say, how could you do that? But what you will find is there are reasons for the lies and how she lied. And you will learn that the symptoms of these lies are in a far greater problem. But I'll get to that as we move along. What we will look at is, as Casey matured, she began to follow the traditional roles of a family and began to project her family's figure into her own mind. That here is a loving couple, have problems, everything else, but they stay together, they love each other, they have a family, they have a home, they provide for everyone. And young Casey began to project that into her own mind and look for her own family and her own world as she grew into maturity. After school, she did as every young teenager does and gets that first job. She started working at Universal. Things were moving along. She was making friends and doing things. She had always been popular in school and remained so at work and with friends and everything else. But this yearning, this internal clock, as you might say, not so much for family, but for love, to seek out the love of her life, to connect with someone on a level much like her father and her mother have connected, began to manifest itself in her. Of course, she was the young, early 20s, party child, as many girls sometimes end up becoming. She attended bars, she had nightclubs, she played, she had fun, she did a lot of these things. But it was during this period that she met someone special. She met this person and started a relationship that was purely work-related. But as most teenage girls sometimes have a difficult time developing and learning about love and learning about the differences between lust and love and understanding the differences of a male psyche versus a female psyche. Young Casey had these issues, probably unknown to her parents. As she continued to work, she developed this relationship with this young man, and one thing led to another, and there was a sexual encounter. This sexual encounter changed Casey in many ways. This encounter actually created a vision of a perfect family. Casey saw this man as her potential husband, her potential father figure for her family. She became transfixed with this ideal, and she basically almost began to stalk this person. Unfortunately, not only did she fall in love, she also became pregnant. This pregnancy was a shock to everyone. She believed now, however, that her love for this man would be reciprocated, and they would start a family and build this perfect little nuclear family. The husband and the wife and the children and the jobs and the house and the cars and the lovely things that we always envisioned our families to have. Unfortunately for Casey, that was not the case. The young man that she met was already engaged, and he was in love, and it turned out that the one-night stand that they had was just that, a one-night stand. But to Casey, the rejection was not something she was accustomed to. And Casey believed that she could convince him to leave his fiancée and be with her. Unfortunately, before that could happen or not happen, the young man was killed in a tragic car accident. This accident had a profound effect on a teenage, now a young adult, but still living at home, still working that first job, still doing all the little things that a teenager would do, and has not had the opportunity to grow up. This accident froze Casey Anthony in the mind, the demeanor, the behavior, and more importantly, the emotional stance of a teenage girl. Casey Anthony developed into a young woman forever searching for love. She was transfixed with this young man that she lost, and now having lost him, she must find a replacement, because her world is not correct now. Her situation is different. She is now with a pregnancy that she did not anticipate, which would have been fine had she married this man. But now she didn't, and now she was worried, deeply concerned as to how her family would react. A very traditional family, a family that did not look kindly to a non-traditional marriage or non-traditional child rearing. So Casey was very concerned and frightened of her father's reaction, of her mother's reaction, of losing the affection of her father, of losing the trust of her parents. So Casey began to lie. First, her world began to fall apart. First, she lost the man. Now she was pregnant. She soon lost her job at Universal Studios. But Casey began to project this alter ego. Casey began to project this alternative lifestyle, the ideal lifestyle. She continued to work. She continued to do the things that the family believed that she was supposed to do. But in reality, she did not have a job. The reality is she did not work, but she could not bring herself to tell them the truth. So what did Casey do? She lied. Every morning, or on the mornings where she believed she would have had a schedule, she awoke, she got ready, she got dressed, she went to work. Soon, this story takes on the life of a Greek tragedy. It's easy to do it the first time. Even easier the second time, a third time, fourth time, fifth time. The problem is, as each one is told, each lie builds on the next lie, and the next lie, and the next lie. And young Casey Anthony soon found herself in a world that was built by lies. She went to work every day. She had all these friends, co-workers that she no longer encountered, so she had to make up new ones because she couldn't have them contacted. She had to perpetuate this story while she tried to figure out what in the world she was going to do. What was even more frightening, and as you will see, is she hid her own pregnancy from her family.